Hello, hello, friends. Today on the podcast, we have a powerful testimony that you are not going to want to miss. My friend Sadie, whom I met just a few weeks ago at an abortion healing retreat, graciously agreed to come on and share her journey of hope, healing, and redemption. Sadie is an amazing mother to 3 beautiful children, an incredible social worker, and a beautiful soul that is completely on fire for Jesus. When she was 15 years old, she found herself in an unplanned pregnancy and was faced with a decision, one that she would regret for the rest of her life, but is now ready to go and tell. So without further ado, here is Sadie's story. Are you struggling with the pain of a past abortion and longing for help but don't know where to turn? Maybe you don't struggle with the pain of a past abortion but are longing for redemption for a sin that you think is too big and too bad. Friend, you're in the right place. I'm Brittany, a wife, mom, and post-abortive woman that is now on a mission to help other women find hope and healing through Jesus. For over 10 years, I tried to hide the pain I carried with me as a result of my choice to have an abortion when I was 17 years old. I thought for years that I had committed the one sin that was unforgivable, and I awaited punishment from God and hid this secret in the deepest depths of my soul for over a decade. After years of prompting from the Holy Spirit, I finally found redemption and hope through Jesus and was able to recognize that when He died for everyone, that meant He died for me too. Now that I am healed, God has placed a calling on my heart to go and tell. So here I am, ready to walk alongside you so that you can find true hope and healing too. If you're ready to break free from those chains and recognize that God has a true plan and purpose for you, no matter what you have done in your past, then this podcast is for you. Fill up your favorite mug with some coffee and crack open your Bible because, friend, it's time to receive the good news. All right, everybody. I am here with my friend Sadie, and she is going to be on the podcast today to tell us a little bit of her own story. So I already read a little bit about her at the beginning of the episode, so you kind of know that, but I think we'll just go ahead and dive in right away and have Sadie just tell us a little bit about her testimony.
Thanks, Brittany. I am Sadie. I had an abortion when I was 15 years old through judicial bypass. In the state of that I live in, I was able to go to court and testify before a judge, tell him I was pregnant, tell him that I didn't want to tell my family, tell him why. From there, it can be approved or denied. And it was approved. What I'm learning is that they're not denied. They are not denied. So it was approved, and I was heavily influenced by many people, although I willingly went and participated and kept a lot of secrets. I had missed a period. I had a friend bring me to our local community healthcare, took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. There's some things that are blurry. I'm now 37, almost 38 years old. And so there's some parts of this trauma that are blurry. And so I don't recall if they gave me any information when I was there, but I remember leaving and getting into my friend's car and saying it's positive. And she had a drink and a snack. She had ran to the gas station and got for me, and she said I knew it. And I told my boyfriend at the time, and very few people knew from there. We told his mom. Her, automatic response was abortion. I remember going to school and telling my school nurse, who I trusted a lot, who I confided in a lot. And her immediate response was, you've ruined your future. You have to have an abortion. And those were, I would put money on almost her exact words. Somewhere I had made a call to the abortion clinic. And as a 15-year-old child, I feel like once that call is made, the decision has almost been made for you. Any obstacle or barrier that I shared with them, they had a way. They guided me to the judicial bypass process, who I needed to call. From there, I contacted that person. She gave me instructions, and it still, it disgusts me the amount of adults who were, I mean, in the community as, decent citizens who never told me the right thing to do.
Mhm.
Tell your parents. I come from loving parents. They love me very much. I have a mom who has an unwavering faith and has instilled that in me and prayed over me and with me since birth. People knew that. I didn't come from a broken home, and not one person guided me to my mom. And that's exactly where I should have been. After, it was boom, boom, bam. I didn't have a license even. Where I live, the nearest abortion clinic is an hour away. And once the appointment was made, the money was secured through my boyfriend's mother. She called someone I still don't know to this day. I know that it was a man in a wheelchair. And so I often find myself recalling that when I see men in wheelchairs who generously donated the money to us so that I could have this done. There still were barriers. How was I going to miss an entire day of school? And, my school, if you were gone and you weren't excused, they'd call your home. We didn't even, not everyone even had cell phones then, so they called your house phone. And my friend's older sister who had a license was willing to bring me. She was going to have to miss school. We went to the same high school. So she needed gas. I needed to get there. I didn't have money for that. I, had gotten the money for the abortion donated by somebody. And so I knew where I had some money, and it was in a drawer, and it was $2 bills that my grandparents would hide for us in our Easter eggs that I had saved because my grandma was convinced they were going to be worth something, and that was our gas money. The barrier still remained of missing school, and my school nurse was willing to knock that barrier down and write a note for me saying that I had been in her office the entire day sick. And so there it was. The plan was constructed. It was all barriers were removed and we were off. So when we went, it was me, of course, my friend's sister who drove. Her boyfriend came with, and my boyfriend came with. And I remember the clinic staff instructing me, when I had made my appointment and as it got closer, that there may be protesters. And they put fear in me, true fear that these were violent, unstable people who automatically hated me because they knew what I was going there for. They instructed me, don't listen to a word they say. Don't look at any material they try to hand you. Don't even make eye contact. And I was terrified. When we went, they were there. And the door, the entry door, for some reason, I'm not sure if they were blocking it. I don't quite recall, but my boyfriend and I were having a hard time finding the door. And so he he asked someone, he said, where's the door to the, and he mentioned the clinic name, the Red River Valley Clinic. And someone said, we're not going to tell you they murder babies. And I remember hearing that, but just again thinking they're the mentally unstable ones, they're the vicious ones, they're the ones that are attacking me. And it went in one ear and out the other. I remember my boyfriend somewhat protecting me from them and, being pretty close in proximity to me physically and kind of shielding me a little bit until we found the door and you buzz in, and once you're in, it's done. Once I was in the clinic, got checked in, my boyfriend left. So he left and went back with my friend's sister and her boyfriend, and the rest was up to me.
That's just thinking about the fact that you were only 15 years old, and while so many people were a part of this, in a sense, you just hearing you say that, it's like how lonely you must have felt in that moment.
I did. I did. And I felt alone. I felt alone in my heart. I felt alone physically. I felt alone. There were other people there. And I, again, with my, very juvenile mind, remember thinking, are they all here for the same thing? Is this a clinic, like a regular? I didn't even know. Is this just a standard clinic? Do they know what I'm doing? Is this what they're doing? And feeling really confused about that, but also very worried and just really keeping my head down for that reason. Because I didn't know if I made eye contact with anyone, if they knew what I was doing. And so I just remember a lot of keeping my head down. I I remember, I mean, they want to call it like, I don't know, education maybe, or counseling or
Yeah.
something of that sort to make sure that, making sure you're not coerced there. And at 15 years old, how are you not
Oh,
without a parent
yeah, exactly.
considered coerced? But I remember there was a group session or something of that sort. And the women in the waiting room, not all of them because they had people with them, but they came in. And then I remember thinking, oh, they are here for the same thing. And then I believe there was like one individual, I don't even know what you'd call it, session, meeting, whatever. I don't really recall that one as much, but I do know that, no one asked me or said the things that my juvenile brain deserved to hear.
Nobody gave you a way out. Nobody tried to be there for you. They just were going through the motions.
Yeah. And I remember feeling that. It's very interesting you say that because I remember feeling that very much. Just, it was like, sit in the waiting room, you get called for the group session. Sit in the waiting room, you get called for your individual session. Sit in the waiting room, you get called for the abortion. And I remember very much feeling that, just going through the motions, but feeling so helpless. I think God has protected me because I don't remember a lot of the procedure. I remember laying there. I remember a nurse attempting to comfort me, but that's about it. I don't I don't remember much about that specifically. And after I do remember filling out, I think, some paperwork that asked some questions, but again, because this has been so long and because my brain was still developing, there's some things that with trauma at such a young age comes kind of some confusion on, was that real? Was that not? So there's some blurriness, that I still question on how things all transpired. But I do remember the recovery room and going over to that, and it was lined with almost like recliners. And I remember sitting in one and just thinking, this is the sickest I've ever felt physically. I remember feeling like I was going to get sick. I was going to vomit. But you're in like an open room full of people. And I remember feeling like some shame and embarrassment of how I even felt after. What if I get sick? What if I throw up all over? There's other people in here. But I remember then that eventually kind of turning to, I feel so sick right now, and almost feeling a sense of panic and fear that what if something isn't right? The other women that were recovering didn't seem to feel the way I did. They were, reclined, and maybe they were fighting their own emotional turmoil in that moment. Many probably were, but I just remember going to fear on they're not acting how I am or feeling how I am, and really getting scared about that. Kind of calmed myself down a little bit. And the woman next to me, people didn't have cell phones, and she was on the clinic phone, and she said to whomever she was talking to, this is the sickest I've ever felt. And I remember that almost, I don't know, bringing me peace maybe, because then I thought, okay, I'm okay. She'd feel sick too. I don't remember how my boyfriend knew to pick me up. I don't remember much of that. I do remember there was a follow-up appointment. I don't recall how much long after it was scheduled for, but I remember thinking, I'll never make it. I'll never pull this off again to come back. I'll never be able to have a ride, have money, have, an excuse for school, have all of these things. And I mean, I just remember in my head that I will never be able to make it back here. And I didn't. I remember the drive home and I cried. And the three that were with, there was a comment made. I can't remember if it was directly to me or if one of them said it to the other, but it was like, why is she crying? Like she just chose to do this. And I remember feeling really dumb. Like I don't have a right to be sitting here crying right now. And that was the mentality that I kept up until January of this year. I also remember maybe a week later, maybe it was longer, I can't quite recall, but I was feeling better physically until one day I wasn't. Something was wrong. I had the worst stomach pain I've ever felt. Something wasn't right. I was laying on my couch basement, almost writhing in pain. I mean, just it hurt so bad. And I remember the clinic telling me that if I sought out medical attention, if I needed to seek out medical attention in between my abortion and my follow-up appointment, to be careful who I went to. And I remember them telling me that if I were to need a pelvic exam, that they would know. And I remember them telling me it was basically be careful who you would allow to get medical care from if you need it, because they will know if they do a pelvic exam. And something was said like, some doctors don't agree with this. And I remember in my juvenile brain thinking, okay, don't go to any medical provider. They'll know and they'll tell your parents because they're not going to agree. And so in that moment of unbearable pain, I recalled that. And my mom had come down and asked me, are you okay? What's going on? And I just said, my stomach hurts so bad. And she asked, do you need to go in? She had no idea. And I remember saying, no, I'm fine. But on that night, I remember laying on the couch thinking, I might die. Something's wrong. And still thinking that if I die tonight, it's what I have to do to keep this secret. Nobody can find out. Clearly, I'm here and that didn't happen, but that's how deep it was. that I will die on this couch before anyone knows what I've done. And it's something I reflect back on often. That's a pretty deep hole to be in.
That is, it's just, and again, I just keep thinking about how young you were and just those are, I don't want to say adult emotions because I think that, I mean, that is even hard for adults, but as adults with fully developed brains, we have more tools to be able to overcome our trauma. And for a child to just, it's just heartbreaking.
It is, and it's heartbreaking to now have children of my own and to think of how I would feel if that were them and that my parents didn't have the opportunity to spare me from something and to spare my baby from something that they really, really, really would have liked to.
I want to talk a little bit about, so we got to meet at a healing retreat. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about how that retreat helped you find the gospel and find healing.
Yeah, the tears that I just cried are of just pain. Now, if any come now, they're joy on this next part because I I was invited to a retreat, a women's Bible study retreat, and I've done therapy. I've been in therapy for 5 years. On a weekly basis, I go. When I was working on my abortion and the sexual exploitation that I experienced as a minor, I was going sometimes anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week to therapy. And that was hard. And sometimes it was painful and it drained me and exhausted me. And, sometimes it impacted my ability to parent because I was tired. And so there were times when I was in therapy that I didn't want to go. I knew it was going to be painful, or I knew it was going to drain or exhaust me. Or sometimes I felt like, what's the point? It's not going to change me. I've been this way for how long? I've done everything that I can. And I came up with a term of, do it anyway, go anyway. And so there were times in therapy I'd sit down on the couch and say, the day I'm here anyway, you know. And I very much had that mentality with this retreat invitation. It was, I've worked on my abortion, I've done trauma work, I've been in therapy. I even thought it didn't really impact me much anymore, but something was telling me to go anyway, go anyway. And I remember introducing myself on the first night, as, hi, I'm Sadie and I'm here anyway. And everyone, looking at me and me explaining that I'm not forgiven. God doesn't forgive me. I'm never going to be forgiven. I'm not free. I'm never going to be. Nothing that we do at this retreat is going to change that, but I'm here anyway. And I remember meaning and saying, the other women that are here, the, participants or people getting trained, they're forgiven. I'm not, and I never will be. And so I went anyway. And, I locked in mentally. I shut in. It was 3.5 days. I spent very little time talking to anybody. There were very few select people that I even talked with. I didn't go on social media much. I locked in and I really gave my all to the assignments, the retreat, the process. I listened to nothing but gospel music and worship music, which I really haven't shut off since. Um, I need it now. Like I
Yes.
need it. It helps me in moments of stress or worry or anxiety or anything. Having it, I need it. And I
Yeah.
haven't shut it off. But I dove in, I isolated, and then that's what I needed to do. My therapist had asked me, I had briefly mentioned that I was going to go do something having to do with my abortion. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, no, really, what are you doing though? Like, what is this? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And that was with intention, my intention, because I thought in order to deal with this, in order to even look at the first chapter that we were assigned, I just need to be there and shut in. I had a fear of I'm going to crumble. I'm going to convulse. This is going to destroy and break me. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but I needed it that way. I needed to just be away and deal. And so it was the most beautiful gift that's ever been given to me as an invitation that I've accepted. The most beautiful gift aside from accepting the forgiveness that's been extended to me from the moment I laid on that table. And I remember the moment that it all clicked.
Yes, I was going to
Um,
ask you to tell about that.
I do remember someone was talking about, or someone mentioned, God didn't just grieve our babies when we had our abortions. And I think I said something like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "God grieved us too, because he knew what that was going to do to our life." And the wheels turned because when I'm upset with my children, when I'm getting after them or I'm preaching to them, or it's like, oh, why are you not getting it? I've said this 500 times. It's not because I am angry, or it's because I love them. I love them and I don't want to see them get hurt. And that was the moment I feel in my brain that it was very visual. A light bulb went off and the floodgates came down. That was my moment of God loves me and I'm forgiven. I hadn't ever opened a Bible before that retreat, and I thought I was a believer, but the truth is that I didn't want to open a Bible and read how much God hates me for what I had done. I didn't want to feel worse about what had happened. I didn't open a Bible because I was scared. And when I finally opened a Bible, this amazing tool and resource that we have, I learned the exact opposite. Jesus loves me. I'm forgiven. I'm free. And not only that, I was able to forgive all of the moving parts of those that helped orchestrate this plan, which took some time.
Yeah.
It took some time. That was something that I held on to stubbornly, and it took some real physical weight on me to realize I had a backpack with bricks in it walking around, and although it was a bit kind of dramatic, I needed that. And I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked until I got tired. And then I thought, nope, if I'm going to sit down, I'm going to sit down with these bricks on. And I remember trying to sit down and being like, well, this is weird and awkward and uncomfortable. And kind of having that light bulb moment too on this anger and everything I'm feeling towards these people is impacting everything, even my ability to be comfortable, and just really learning that me forgiving others isn't a feeling. I didn't have a big, oh, I feel so much better. I didn't have that.
Right.
But forgiveness isn't a feeling. Left on a Sunday, had therapy on a Tuesday, and my therapist and I had joked a bit before I went that, well, I don't know, I guess I'll see you on Tuesday and we'll see what it was. And I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to see him. I couldn't wait to tell him everything. And, I remember telling him, I'm forgiven and free. And not only am I forgiven and free, I forgave. I forgave. And he knew the depths of my anger.
Mm.
and how deep it really went. And I remember him just saying, "How?" And I said, I opened my Bible.
Yes.
And, I'll never be the same. I'll never be the same. And it's the most beautiful thing. I didn't realize that I hadn't felt joy. I hadn't felt much of anything but anxiety and stress and anger and all of these things. I didn't even know how badly I needed that until I got the healing. I didn't truly see all of the areas it was impacting because it was every single thing. And so now here I am, and it's time. There's work to do. It's time to share my story, encourage others to share their story. It's not about me or my story. The glory is all His. But if I can help anyone else to receive it, hear it, know it, then that's the work that I need to do.
Amen. And you feel that God has really just been working on you for this moment to raise you up because, as one of our mutual friends says, the ministry field is ripe for harvest. And just another friend of mine said to me once that it takes someone to go first. And there are so many women that share something in common with us, that they've walked through the same thing. And both of us were under the age of 18, just children, and there's so many people just working to heal from the same thing. And when you go first, you inspire someone else to find hope in the gospel and really just kind of change their life. And so I think it's amazing that you're sharing your story to help other people.
Thank you. And I know a lot of people. I interact with a lot of people, and I have a lot of members of the community that, know me, and I know them. And I am kind of, since receiving God's word and the gift of forgiveness and His love, I'm like, get to know me again, because this time I have no fear, no shame, no embarrassment. People think that they know me, but they had no idea, the depths of the darkness that I have lived.
Yeah, it's people don't realize everything that goes into this whole thing. I mean, it's just a word to some people. It's just a thing, and they don't realize the full depths of what a woman goes through when making this decision. And talking earlier about how many people were involved in the decision for you to even be legally able to make that choice. It's just, I think more people would be appalled if they really actually realized how
Yeah.
easy and how orchestrated it is.
Like I said, I didn't have a license. I was dropped off at school. For all my family knew, I was going to school. It was a normal day. It was a regular day. Everything else was lined up to pull it off. It should not be that easy. It shouldn't be. And I think you're right. I think if more people knew, what children, young adults, I mean, what they're up against. And like I said, from the moment I made the call to the clinic, I feel like it was done. There wasn't anything that they were going to allow to get in the way.
No,
And I think people would be absolutely disgusted that it was as easy as it was.
absolutely. I think we talked a little bit about this, but last week there was a law signed by Governor Walz in Minnesota called the PRO Act that now allows minors to make this decision, and they don't even have to go to a judge anymore.
So earlier this week, it's been bothering me.
Mm-hmm.
It's been bothering me on, I've known judicial bypass, it was still a thing. I've known that it still exists. I didn't know how the overturning of Roe v. Wade impacted that. And so it was bothering me. And I have asked, I even asked an attorney, I'll pay you, find this out for me. If a woman in the state that I live in North Dakota, can she go have a judicial bypass hearing, and can that court order be used in Minnesota? And the answers that I was getting from experts, in law was kind of like, well, probably. And it was bothering me. I needed to know. And so it dawned on me earlier this week. I know exactly who will know. I know exactly who will know. And I thought, I'm making the call. And I did. I contacted the clinic. I said, hi, I'm trying to help a neighbor girl that just confided in me. She's a minor, she's pregnant. She's saying something about some court, something or other. And the clinic staff interrupted me. She said, oh, no, there's no court anything. She doesn't need to go to court.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, what? And she said, we're in Minnesota now. We don't have abortion laws. This is healthcare.
Oh.
And I said, but we live in North Dakota. And she said, no, it doesn't matter. And she said, has she gone on our website? And I said, I'm not sure. And she said, oh, just tell her to hop on our website. There's information about medication abortion. There's pictures of our new facility. There's our contact information. Just tell her to hop on there. There it is. Boom, boom, done. And I feel sick that it is now easier because I lived in that torture for 22 years. And people need to know. People need to know.
They do, because their children are doing this and going through this, and they have no idea that it is happening.
No one ever. I think sometimes, I've even found myself doing it as a mom. I'd know. I'd know if my kids were experimenting with drugs or alcohol. I'd know if they were sneaking out. I'd know. No one knew. No one knew. And so it is that easy. And I was a good kid. I'll take some of that back. I was not a good kid. I was not living and making good choices, but no one knew that. My teachers didn't know that. I know how to be respectful and have manners, and no one had a clue. So it's terrifying to think even the good ones, the ones that you'd never suspect, are the ones that could be led down this path.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't discriminate.
Absolutely. When you think about the children that are contemplating this right now, what would you say to them if you had the opportunity to sit down with them?
Oh, that is tough, because I want to say, do the right thing. Tell the people you need to tell. But I quickly go back to thinking to myself when I was 15, and I wouldn't have. But what I would say is that this will destroy you. This will destroy you. And even if you don't think it will destroy you right now, you think you're taking care of a problem, you're escaping accountability, you don't want people to know, it will destroy you. And it is something you will live with until the day we're called home.
Absolutely. So if you don't want to answer this question, that's okay. But I'm thinking about, all of the people that were involved in creating the judicial bypass. And if you had the opportunity to speak to the judge that signed the judicial bypass and approved you, have you thought about what you would say to him?
I have. I wrote him a letter.
Did you?
I did. I don't remember exactly what it was, but in 2022, we have our triggers, right? Even though now they hit much differently, because I am pretty quick to be able to bounce back, where before finding healing, I would sit in that sometimes for days. So there must have been something that really triggered me last year. and I just needed to get it out. And I'm not a writer. I'm not a journaler. I don't do that. I just needed to get it out. I was so distraught by, this judicial bypass and, no 13, 14, 15-year-old could go sit before a judge and say, well, I'm 15, but really I'm like 21. So can you just let me go buy some alcohol and drink? Or, I'm 15, but I want to smoke cigarettes and I'm mature enough to make that decision. So can you just let me go do that? That's how absurd it is. No one would ever be allowed to do that because there's consequences to those actions on a developing brain. Yet we can sit down and claim to be mature enough to abort a child. And so I did. I wrote a letter that I have, and I've never done anything with it other than, I wrote it, but just really saying the things that I wanted to say.
That's powerful. If they only knew the scope of what they were allowing when they signed that paper, it's just.
I, recall saying things like, you hold people accountable in this courtroom or in your courtroom every day. Why was I any different?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only word that can describe it is evil and crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I have to keep the mentality that they didn't know. They didn't know.
That's powerful. I love that. That's amazing. Well, I have 3 questions I like to ask everybody that I interview before we end the episode. But first, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and brave and sharing your story. I know that your story is going to save children and babies, and it's also going to save women from their prisons that they've made for themselves. And just seeing how the gospel has changed you and how the Holy Spirit is working through you has just been so, so cool to be able to watch. So thank you.
Thank you.
But with that, these are some just fun little questions. So our first question is, what is your favorite pizza topping?
Oh, I like pepperoni. I like
Oh,
supreme, but
yeah.
no olives. I don't like olives.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I think I remember that now.
yeah, even if they're chopped up and tiny, I can still taste them. Even if there's a drop of juice, I'll
Oh
taste it.
my goodness.
Pepperoni though. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
you can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
And then what's one movie that you could watch over and over again?
Oh, hands down, Sister Act 1 and 2.
Oh, nice.
I love those movies. I could watch them. I've seen them hundreds and hundreds of times. I could watch them hundreds more.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And this last one is, what is your current favorite worship song?
Oh, I have so many. In fact, before I got on here with you, I listened to them really loud.
Yeah.
Really, really loud because it clears out my head. And honestly, I feel, as cheesy as this sounds, when I'm listening to worship music, I feel like I'm putting on my armor.
Yes.
I do. And so before I hopped on here, I mean, my speaker was rattling. I just have to drown out the noise and drown out the world and just really get into it. So I have so many, but right now my favorite is, I will find it because I was just listening to it. Break Every Chain.
Ah, yes. That's
And that's the one that is probably going to blow my car speakers.
yes.
Because that's the one I'm blasting on repeat this past week.
Oh, yes. That one is so good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Sadie, for coming on the podcast and for just sharing your testimony with our listeners. I know that they are going to absolutely love listening to it.
Thanks, Brittany.
Hey, friends. So, after the interview, Sadie actually emailed me the letter that she wrote to the judge. It is so filled with emotion, truth, And I honestly don't have words. She gave me permission to share it with you guys, and honestly, it wouldn't even be close to the same if I read it to you. I asked her if she would record it for us, and she did. And so you will now get to hear from Sadie herself a letter written to the judge that signed her judicial bypass, and also one last message she wanted to leave at the conclusion of her interview. If you haven't already, grab some tissues for this last part because it is powerful.
Dear Judge, I'm nearly certain you don't remember me, but I remember you still 22 years later. I remember where you sat in relation to me. I remember your hair color. I don't recall us ever making much eye contact, but I do remember part of me desperately wishing you'd see through my staged words that were coming from my mouth. Unfortunately for myself and the life growing inside of me, you didn't. Did you even look at me? You couldn't have. If you had, you would have seen my fear, my hands shaking, my deer in headlights expression. Do you ever think of who these babies may have become? What if they would have cured cancer, AIDS, autoimmune disease, or something so incredible it's yet to even be created? I think about that often. I bet I looked like I had a good head on my shoulders. I was dressed well to be respectful of your courtroom. I was instructed this is important. I know you're not always used to seeing that. Didn't you think I meant what I said to you? That I wanted to make something of myself and have a future? That I wanted to further my education, obtain a career, and be successful? Didn't you trust that this would mean I would continue to develop emotionally, physically, spiritually, and that once my brain fully developed, I would regret and live in mental imprisonment from the decision you allowed me to make? You robbed my parents of the right to parent me. Their rights were terminated for an entire day, and they had no idea. Did you consider that I may be looking more to escape the accountability I would have had to take by my parents knowing I was being careless and irresponsible? You issue rulings on a daily basis that hold individuals accountable for their actions. Why was I any different? Did you ever think that I would grow up and eventually have children and the impact this would have on them? Why was I granted the right to be so selfish? Not a single other person could ever sit in your courtroom and claim a defense of selfishness, yet there I was. Could I have pled my case on why I should have been deemed mature enough to go into a liquor establishment, purchase, and then consume alcohol? Could I have pled my case that I was mature enough to purchase and ingest tobacco? Could I have pled my case that I was mature enough to vote? Ask yourself, why not? It sure sounds absurd when we use the scenarios that could have been life-altering and had consequences and impact on my developing brain and body. How was this any different? What was it about me at 15 that screamed mature enough to you? Did you know that I sat through my procedure alone? That I paid for a friend's sibling's gas with the $2 bills my grandparents used to give me and hide in my eggs during Easter egg hunts? Did you know that I was informed that if I should need medical attention after my procedure, to be careful on which doctor saw me or treated me because they will know? I spent a night in my basement on the couch with the worst pain. A week or so later, too scared to go in for medical attention, having thoughts I may die on the basement couch. But that if that's what I had to do to keep my secret, that's what I had to do. No one can know. Did you know that I sat through my procedure alone? That I paid for a friend's sibling's gas with the $2 bills my grandparents used to give me from hiding them in my Easter eggs during Easter egg hunts? Did you know that I was informed that if I should need medical attention after my procedure, to be careful on which doctor saw me or treated me because they will know? I spent a night in my basement on the couch with the worst pain. A week or so later, too scared to go in and seek medical help, having thoughts I may die on the basement couch. But if that's what I had to do to keep my secret, that's what I had to do. No one can ever know. Did you know every September since seeing you I struggle? This would have been the month of my due date. Did you ever think how this would impact my family, my parents, my siblings, my beautiful aunts and uncles, cousins who love me dearly? How did you think I came to you? Did you think I had knowledge of judicial bypass through my own research? Didn't you wonder who helped me get to you? You asked me if anyone was forcing me there. Didn't you consider my ability to simply make it to you as a child, as being guided? I didn't even have a driver's license. You didn't ask me any of this. When I sat in your courtroom, what I wish you would have done and said is look at me. Look me in my eyes and have told me that I was going to be okay, that I could still accomplish all that I said to you, even if I were to take an alternative route. You were old enough to be my father, possibly even grandfather. I wish you would have guided me as such. What I have lived with since seeing you is guilt, shame, anger, remorse, depression, embarrassment, anxiety, lack of self-esteem, lack of self-worth, always feeling less than and disgusting. What has transpired in my life because of these feelings has done far more damage to myself and everyone around me, more than giving the gift of life ever could have. Your Honor, I want you to know I'm no longer angry with you. I had so many people misguide me. I have to trust that you did not know what you were doing, because if you had, your approval was only a pure act of evil. If that be the case, there's nothing I can do for you. You'll have to face that eternal consequence. But what you can do now is see me, see us, and do better. Because I found healing and I've accepted the forgiveness of our merciful Father, I need you to know that I forgive you too. With liberty and justice for not just some, but all. Respectfully, 15-year-old me. To my parents, I need you to know there isn't anything you could have done once I learned of my pregnancy. I had accomplices guiding me to take your right to parent me, love me, protect me, and your grandchild away. I'm so sorry that this is part of my truth and that it will bring you pain. This isn't my intent. But you raised me to be boisterous and to help others in need. For that, I thank you, as others will be healed in Jesus' name through me sharing my message. Your seeds were in fact planted. They took a long time to bloom. I wish my plant would have bloomed long before this. But there is purpose in the pain even when we can't make sense of it in this lifetime. To my friends and other extended family, thank you for your love and ongoing support. I'll need it as I move forward in this calling and on my journey of continuous healing. To the friends and family that I will lose by speaking my truth, I'll miss you. I love you and I'm here should you ever change your mind. For the post-abortive woman hurting, allow yourself to grieve the forbidden grief you've held on to, and I pray that you'll turn to the Father to find your healing. There is no other way. I tried for 22 years. To the post-abortive woman who thinks this is her right, or that the clump of tissue that was aborted doesn't impact you, you're lying to yourself. Tell me why then do you feel the shame and guilt you do? Why have you spent even a moment of time thinking about this again? We both know, even if they're only in moments, they're there. In healing, you'll be able to recognize all the ways that this has impacted you and everyone around you. I pray for you that you find it. To those who want to say, who does Sadie think she is, being all Christian now? How dare I cast any judgment on one another? I played a role in ending the life of a child. I'm no one to judge anyone else's sins or choices. To the father of my baby, what we did was wrong, but it's not unforgivable. I forgive you, and I ask that you forgive me. I want all things good for you and wish you no harm in sharing our story. Out of respect for you, you will remain nameless. For all who played a role in my abortion, I've forgiven you too. To my oldest son, I am so sorry that you had to spend even one day with the unhealed version of me. There hasn't been a single moment that I haven't loved you wholeheartedly and unconditionally. I'm sorry that I didn't accept the gift of God's forgiveness sooner, so that you could have had a better mom. But I have done my best with what I had and with what I knew. Please know now that I know better. I can work to do better, and that includes who I am as your mom. To my middle son, I love you. A common deflection to abortion is that it leads to more children in the foster care system. I want you to know and hear you are no less valuable because of the time you spent in care. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Your birth mother chose life for you, and for that I will be forever grateful. God created you and formed you in her womb. You were and have always been picked, chosen, and loved. Thank you for your courage and bravery that it takes for you to allow me to love you as your mom. To my daughter, I will work tirelessly to share my story, to protect you from the evil that exists in this world, and to stay healed so you'll never have to experience the unhealed version of me. I'm willing to break this generation of sin by speaking truth so that you can live the life you deserve. I refuse to raise you in a world where your life can be ruined so quietly, quickly, and easily. To my baby who now rests and lives in heaven, I yearn for the day where I get to run to you, embrace you, hold you, and see your face. I am so sorry that this never got to happen. I loved you then, and I love you still. The life you were created to have, the gifts and joy you should have been able to share with this world will never be gone in vain. You had and have a purpose, and I will make sure that purpose is shared with the world.
If you are listening to this testimony and you are struggling with the pain of a past abortion, I pray that Sadie's testimony has inspired you to receive the good news and get help. Please reach out to your church, local pregnancy resource center, or if you feel like you need someone who understands, please reach out to me on either one of my Instagram accounts or send me an email at goodgoodnewspod@gmail.com. And I would be happy to help you locate a group or a study in your area. You deserve to heal, and I hope that you will not wait any longer. Until next time, my friend, take care and God bless. Thank you for listening. Friend, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. My prayer is that all of you who listen will receive this truth and love and will walk away feeling blessed, hopeful, and excited for the next episode. Before you go, I would be so grateful if you would subscribe to the show and head to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. Reviews are the only way I'm able to know that you are truly loving the show, and it brings me so much joy and happiness to get to hear directly from you. One last thing, if you would like to follow along with me on social media, please follow the show on Instagram at GoodNewsPod or my personal Instagram at BrittanyPoppy. I'll have these links for you in the show notes. And remember, you very well might know someone that needs this show. Spread the word if the Spirit leads, and make sure to tune in to the next episode. I can't wait to see you very soon.